Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving deep into an incredibly fascinating, evidence-based look at one of the most remarkable phenomena in human biology. We generally tend to think of reading as just a simple leisure activity, right? A nice way to pass the time, or maybe just a practical method for extracting information. But looking at the modern neuroscientific consensus, it tells a completely different story. Reading is not just some passive hobby. It is a profound, systemic biohack. It's literally a highly targeted intervention that physically alters your brain's architecture, optimizes your micromental health, and honestly serves as a massive engine for long-term cognitive longevity.
To kick things off, I want to pose a question directly to you. Can a book leave a physical imprint on your biology days after you finish it? Think about the last time you closed a truly gripping, can't-put-it-down kind of novel. You probably felt a lingering emotional resonance, right? But what if that feeling wasn't just an abstract mood? What if your brain's actual resting state connectivity was physically running a sort of shadow activity in the background long after the pages were closed?
Okay, let's dive into this. There was this landmark study out of Emory University that mapped the resting state functional networks of students for days after they read a thriller novel. And the lead neuroscientist on this, Dr. Gregory Burns, discovered something absolutely mind-blowing. Even when these participants were completely at rest inside an fMRI scanner, not reading at all, their brains showed significantly heightened connectivity in the left temporal cortex. That's the region responsible for language receptivity. They had essentially developed this lingering biological echo of the narrative. It's an altered neurological state that persisted for days, operating exactly like muscle memory, but for the brain.
So here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. Rewiring the human brain. 2. Simulating minds and empathy. 3. Print versus digital. 4. Rapid stress reduction. And finally, cognitive reserve.
Let's start with Section 1, Rewiring the Human Brain.
So human beings didn't actually evolve to read. It's a very recent cultural invention, which means there's no single reading center inherently built into our genetic code. To pull it off, the brain performs this incredible feat of neuroplasticity known as neuronal recycling. As we learn to read, our brain literally reorganizes a portion of its visual object recognition network, a region originally meant for recognizing faces and physical objects, and completely repurposes it to process letters and written words. This highly specialized, repurposed real estate becomes known as the visual word form area. And the coolest part? This structural updating mechanism is so robust that it happens even in adults who learn to read later in life.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. If you look at this functional MRI data, you can actually track the emergence of that visual word form area across individuals with varying levels of literacy. You can see firsthand how reading physically enhances visual responses in the fusiform and occipital cortex. It's structurally refining the cortical organization, literally reinforcing white matter tracks so that visual inputs can instantly connect with auditory language processing. It's like upgrading your brain's internal wiring.
But wait, it goes way beyond just visual processing. Remember that Emory University study we just talked about? Well, they also found heightened connectivity in the central sulcus, which is the primary sensory motor region of the brain. This highlights a fascinating phenomenon known as grounded cognition. When you read a highly descriptive passage about, say, a character running, the exact neurons associated with the physical act of running actually fire in your own brain. So a physical book essentially acts as a sophisticated, immersive virtual reality simulator for your entire nervous system.
Moving right along to Section 2. Simulating minds and empathy.
Beyond just mapping physical movement, reading deeply impacts our social networks through a psychological concept called theory of mind. Basically, this is your ability to understand that other people have beliefs, intents, and desires that are totally different from your own. It is the absolute bedrock of complex social relationships and empathy. When we read fiction, we recruit the brain's default mode network and our mirror neuron systems. We are quite literally forced to put ourselves in the character's shoes, effectively taking our social cognitive networks to the gym for an intense workout.
Now, what's really interesting here is that the specific type of reading material matters immensely. Research by Raymond Marr, along with Kidd and Castano, shows that this theory of mind enhancement is specifically tied to reading literary fiction. When they compared it to popular genre fiction or nonfiction, they found that literary fiction forces a much higher degree of active cognitive engagement to infer what the characters are actually feeling.
So why is that? Well, the mechanics of literary fiction act as this elite workout for empathy because they disrupt our scripted expectations. Popular fiction often relies on predictable tropes, which kind of lets us fall into passive consumption,
Literary fiction, on the other hand, is densely packed with what researchers call reflective function markers. It forces you into this highly active state of social simulation, making you constantly decode complex, ambiguous human behavior. Which brings us to Section 3, Print versus Digital.
You know, it's not just what we read, but how we read it. And right now, we are dealing with a massive epidemic of digital overload and attention fragmentation. When we contrast traditional print reading with digital screens, the neurobiological differences are honestly staggering. Physical paper provides these stable, spatial, and tactile cues. You can literally feel the weight of the pages. Your brain physically maps where a specific sentence lives in three-dimensional space. Digital screens, conversely, trigger cognitive overload, a lot of skimming behavior, and this severe split attention effect, as our brains desperately try to manage the backlight, the scrolling, and the formatting all at the same time. In the scientific community, they actually call this the screen inferiority effect. There's this fascinating Japanese fMRI study that used manga to test this exact thing. They had participants read half a story on a tablet and the other half on regular paper, and the brain scans were wild. They revealed that participants reading on digital tablets required significantly higher activation in their frontal brain regions just to answer basic comprehension questions. The tablet literally caused a cognitive processing delay. Reading on paper, however, allowed for much lower effort, deeper narrative integration. Paper just allows your brain to organize complex information way more efficiently.
All right, let's look at Section 4, Rapid Stress Reduction.
So, we know deep reading on paper is highly cognitively efficient. Now let's connect that efficiency to systemic physiological health, specifically stress regulation and sleep optimization, which are huge components of our micromental health. Now what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer scale of the effect. Look at this staggering data from MindLab International. They elevated subjects' heart rates and stress levels, and then tested various interventions. Just 6 minutes of reading was the single most effective stress intervention tested. It reduced stress levels by a massive 68%. It beat out listening to music, having a cup of tea, taking a walk, and it completely blew playing video games out of the water.
Let's actually walk through the exact biological mechanism happening here. Reading requires intense singular focus, which surprisingly induces a mild altered state of consciousness. This deep work actively shuts down the sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight or flight response. Your heart rate drops, muscle tension releases, and the amygdala, the brain's fear center, literally deactivates, allowing your rational frontal cortical networks to take the wheel again. This isn't just a pleasant distraction, folks. It is a targeted physiological shutdown of cortisol, proving that a physical book is a highly effective tool for sleep optimization and hormonal balance.
Finally, Section 5, Cognitive Reserve.
This brings us to the ultimate long-term health outcome of everything we've talked about: healthy aging. Maintaining late-life cognitive activity, primarily through reading, actually delays the onset of Alzheimer's dementia symptoms by an astonishing 5 years. We're talking about 5 full years of prolonged health span, cognitive preservation, and lifelong vitality.
These are what we call late-life cognitive defenders. Landmark findings from Rush University tracking older adults showed that late-life mental stimulation is the primary driver of this delayed dementia onset. And honestly, the best part? This protective effect is completely independent of your early childhood education. It is literally never too late to start. Engaging in these habits, like reading books, visiting the library, writing letters, directly impacts how long you retain your cognitive independence as you age.
So the crucial point is perfectly captured in this quote by Dr. Robert S. Wilson. Post-mortem autopsies revealed something truly incredible. The brains of avid readers often showed the exact same physical Alzheimer's damage, the plaques and tangles, as non-readers. Yet the readers didn't show the outward symptoms of dementia until much, much later. This is the profound concept of cognitive reserve. Reading physically builds up such dense, robust alternative neural pathways that the brain can simply route around the physical damage and keep functioning normally for years longer.
So, we've seen how reading physical books structurally rewires the brain. We've seen how it acts as a virtual reality simulator for empathy, drastically outperforms digital screens for comprehension, physically shuts down your biological stress response, and literally buys you years of cognitive health in old age. Every system influences every other system. So, I want to leave you with this thought-provoking question. Are you treating your physical books merely as entertainment, or are you ready to embrace them as essential preventative healthcare technology? The science is abundantly clear. The choice of how to upgrade your brain is entirely yours.